Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN AM for Monday, November 20th, 2023. At our top story today, items in the Thanksgiving food basket decline in price, but inflation still pressures consumers. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, David Anderson is an economist and professor at Texas A&M University. David, always great to see you. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Glad to be here.
And it's Thanksgiving week, and I hope you're getting ready for Thanksgiving with your family. We'll talk about individual, the components of a Thanksgiving meal in a few minutes. But in general, where are we with food and inflation?
Well, inflation's sort of still with us, but if we looked at the big numbers in the CPI report that just came out a few days ago, the rate of growth has really cooled and it's slowed down. And so then we really dig into the details of it. And really food, I do more work in the meat area, meat and dairy and eggs, and we've got some items that are higher and some that are lower than they were a year ago. And some that are, if we compare to the last month, they're about the same. And so, if we dug in a little deeper to beef, for instance, there's two kind of retail price series, the choice beef. And so if you went to the grocery store, you might get a steak and it says USDA choice on it. That's the quality grade. Those prices actually declined from the month before. So those have come down. But if we looked at a broader spectrum of what the data is called the all fresh, meaning it could be prime or select or choice, that actually crept up a little bit. And so as we dig into the details we certainly have some items that are falling and some that are going up.
Yeah. And David, I want to shift gears and I want to have a little fun with this segment. I want to talk about the Thanksgiving meal. A lot of Americans here in the States are going to sit down, actually overseas, our military men and women fighting abroad or at bases abroad are going to be celebrating Thanksgiving. And I want to unpack the Thanksgiving meal. I want to ask you a couple questions and we'll carry this into the second segment. Let's have some fun. Let's talk about turkey, the price of turkey. How does that kind of look going into Thanksgiving 2023?
Well, that's the big one, right? This is the time of year, that whole roasted turkey, that's the showpiece item. That's what we all think about. And you remember last year we had record high prices for turkeys, driven by supply cuts because of avian influenza, the cumulative effect of higher costs, feed costs, and things like that. Well, markets work, and high prices got turkey producers to produce more than they did the year ago. We didn't have avian influenza really this year leading up to Thanksgiving, cutting supplies. And so we're producing more turkeys. In fact, over the last month, we got 2% more than we did a year ago, and prices have dropped dramatically. In fact, in the wholesale market, we had turkeys last week that were 50% of the price the same week the year before. And so sharply lower wholesale prices, which allows our stores to do a lot more featuring and a lot more specials. And that's a food item where we're going to see lower prices than we did a year ago.
And David, just kind of rounding out the entrees, if you will. I mean, my family, when we have Thanksgiving, it's almost like a buffet. I mean, you just gorge, everyone eats at different times of the day, but gorge. There's lots of things on the table. And I want you to throw in some of your favorites too. But let's talk about duck. Isn't like the turducken, that is, I don't know exactly what that is, but is that part of some people's choice, the duck? Where are we with duck prices?
Well, I don't see much data on that. My mom used to do a goose. So it was all dark meat. I always liked it because I like that big turkey leg, So I do tend to go towards the dark meat a little bit, but we don't see a lot of retail price data that we could, compare against and use, but certainly duck, goose, the turducken that you mentioned, one stuffed in another, it makes for a pretty fun kind of celebration product. So certainly turkeys are lower. That's good news for all of us. If we looked at some other kind of celebration items, you might be into rack of lamb. Actually, retail lamb prices are lower than they were a year ago. So that's a little good news if you like that. So, there's a bunch of those kind of celebration holiday items in the meat case anyway that I think we're going to see some deals on.
Yeah, and deals are good, especially after a year of really high prices. David, I want to ask you, let's look a little bit into agriculture. Can you talk a little bit about, I like cranberry sauce, and though I don't always get fresh cranberry sauce, I love cranberries, I love yams. How about those two items? Is agriculture doing better? Because I think either last time or the time before, drought was a big concern, and certainly cranberries and I would think potatoes or yams need water to grow.
They sure do. And the key is where we grow some of those. We grow a lot of sweet potatoes in the South or yams in the South. We grow, in fact, I think we grow some in California too. It's a big producer, but I tend to think of the South as being our big kind of sweet potato yam area, where those are grown. Some areas we've had some drought, other areas we haven't. In fact, if we looked at I'm going to call it the basic building blocks of our big old Thanksgiving spread, where we might, certainly cranberries. Cranberry prices, even for the whole fresh cranberries, are a little higher than they were last year. I think at retail we see some higher prices for those. Pumpkins, I think it's a real split between what I've seen at grocery stores for, say, the canned pumpkin we're going to turn into something. Those are higher than they were a year ago. But the whole ones, for the pie-sized ones, are actually cheaper. And so, if you like to kind of start with the pumpkin and roast it and puree it and do it from scratch, I think there might be some deals on that too. The other building blocks, the onions, the potatoes, the things like that. If we looked at USDA's retail price data that comes from grocery stores, they have a data set that includes over 29,000 grocery stores across the country. Those basic building blocks, the onions, potatoes, green beans, things like that, are actually lower than they were a year ago. So I think we may see some price relief, not just from the turkey, but across a bunch of things.
That's a good thing. David, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about the Thanksgiving dinner. Maybe we'll talk to David about some of his family's traditions. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Well, David, thanks so much for staying with us this morning. Really appreciate you hanging around for segment number 2.
Glad to do it.
All right, David, you gave us some really good information about what we're calling the Thanksgiving spread, and I have a question for you. Take us into the Anderson home What's some of your traditions? What do you and your family like to prepare for Thanksgiving?
Well, we tend to eat like hogs and lay around and watch football, basically. But several years ago, I said, we got to break out of this. So we started doing the local turkey trot. Early Thanksgiving morning, they have a 5K and a 1 mile kind of walk deal. So the whole family, we go do the turkey trot. Then we go home and there's a lot of cooking and football watching going on. We do the turkey and I think last year we smoked it. I got the smoker out. We did that. I fried them before. This year it's going to be a traditional roast turkey in the oven. My wife does. She's already prepping stuff
Wow.
for Thanksgiving. My job is she says I'm basically the sous chef, so I'm chopping onions up and chopping stuff up and stand around and but we do the kind of the normal stuff, turkey dressing or stuffing, whatever you call it. Green beans, sweet potatoes, mashed potatoes, the kind of all the stuff.
Yeah, David, I want to ask you. This is not within your specific, I guess, discipline. Well, I mean, it's in economics, but I want to ask you about, do you think more Americans are going to be traveling? You talk about some of the prices that in segment one, we talked about maybe inflation cooling in some areas. I think Americans are going to do, just your best guess, going to do more traveling. The price of gas has come down, price of oil has come down. So maybe that might mean people will travel to grandma's and to the Anderson home for Thanksgiving.
Well, you know what? At least with lower fuel costs, it gives you a break on that travel because I think Thanksgiving is this one holiday that you know people go home, they go to where their family is, and so at least if you're driving, you get a little break on the fuel cost, and that's I think that's pretty great as well. Because as you point out, we do have lower prices, and in fact, that was a large part of the cooling idea in the CPI report was on the energy side with lower oil prices, lower fuel prices. But you know, it's Thanksgiving seems to be about the biggest travel day of the year. It seems like every year, and so I expect people to be traveling, and at least this cuts some of us a break.
Yeah, especially if you're driving, I guess you're going to get it a little bit cheaper. I think it's tedious to drive, but that's just my opinion. But it's also tedious to wait in lines at the airport. Uh, you're right. I mean, we've all been there, and it seems like from all indications are there's going to be a high volume of people traveling. David, last question. A lot of people maybe don't want to prepare their turkey, and they want to go out, and that seems to be sometimes on an off year, people will do that. Let's talk a little bit about restaurant prices. I've seen stories about restaurants raising prices because the cost of goods, the cost of labor, other things like California raising the minimum wage for certain fast food restaurants. What about those maybe venturing out to a local restaurant to enjoy Thanksgiving?
I think, if we look at restaurants and their pricing, they got to try to put a meal together at a price that folks can afford, but also gives them a margin. And as we think about inflation and higher costs, whether it's labor or energy, even just keeping the lights on, preparing the meals, all those, that means, you're facing all of those cost increases along the way. Whereas, maybe if you were cooking at home, you might actually be seeing some lower prices for some of those items because you're absorbing all those preparation and retail costs yourself with your own time and your own labor. And so, I think restaurants have struggled, and, there's certainly some data that shows restaurant traffic might be the same, yet sales are up because their total costs are up. The price of that meal is higher. So, it really is a mixed bag across all of it. But boy, the lure of going out some days when you think about all the cooking you're going to be doing and standing around the kitchen, it looks pretty attractive.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that for some people, maybe in every other year or an off year, going out and it helps the local restaurants and you get a different taste and different flavor of food. Well, David, thanks so much for joining us. Go ahead.
If you got another second, we think of Thanksgiving and this holiday and everything. If that restaurant's open, we got some folks that are away from their families because they're working there at that restaurant, and so it's a big day for them too, and an important day too. And so, a thought for them who are working that day and maybe don't have all the time off some of the others of us have. I think it's probably worth a good thought for those folks, and maybe some extra kindness when we're at the restaurant too.
Absolutely. Always nice to be nice. And also remember, people, when it comes to gratuity, remember that situation when it comes to the gratuity at the end of the meal. I was going to say night, but it doesn't always take place at night for a lot of people. David, wishing you a very happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and to you, by the way, to your students. And we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Well, thanks a lot. It's good. Always great to be with you.
And that wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, then visit our website. We're back again tomorrow with another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.